You don't actually see me. You see the idea of having someone impressive on your arm.
Soo-jin was absolutely certain he was nailing this date. The restaurant was perfect. Low lighting, jazz playing softly in the background, the kind of place where even the air tasted expensive. He'd ordered wine that cost more than most people's monthly rent, wore his best suit, and had his phone strategically placed face down on the table to show he was present. Across from him sat Zara Okafor, easily the most beautiful woman he'd dated in months, and he was already mentally planning their next 3 outings. So then I told the board, he said, leaning back with practiced confidence, that if they wanted innovation they needed to stop thinking like dinosaurs. You should have seen their faces. Zara smiled politely, the way someone smiles at a child showing them a drawing that's just okay. She picked up her wine glass, took a small sip, then set it down with deliberate care. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything," Soo-jin replied smoothly, thinking this was it, the moment she'd ask about his family, his future, all the boxes wealthy women usually wanted checked. "When you look at me right now, what do you actually see?" The question landed weird. Too serious. Too therapy-ish. Soo-jin felt his confidence wobble slightly. "I see someone I'm enjoying getting to know. Someone interesting and—" "That's not what I asked." Zara's voice was gentle but firm, like a teacher correcting a student who wasn't paying attention. "I asked what you see. Not what sounds good to say." Soo-jin opened his mouth then closed it. For the first time all evening he had no clever response ready. Zara nodded as if he'd just confirmed something she'd suspected all along. She reached for her purse. "Wait, where are you going?" Genuine confusion crept into his voice now. "Home." She stood, pulling on her coat with calm efficiency. "You're very charming, Soo-jin. You know all the right restaurants, you wear the right clothes, you say mostly the right things. But you don't actually see me. You see the idea of having someone impressive on your arm. And I'm too old to be anyone's accessory. That's not fair." "It's completely fair." She placed several bills on the table, her share of the meal. The gesture stung more than any insult could have. "Maybe someday you'll understand why. I hope you do." She walked out, heels clicking against marble, leaving Soo-jin sitting alone in a restaurant full of couples who seemed to understand something fundamental that he didn't. His phone buzzed. A text from his father, "Board meeting 9 a.m. Don't embarrass me." Soo-jin stared at the message, then at the empty chair across from him, then at the other diners who were definitely pretending not to notice his spectacular rejection. For the first time in his 28 years, he felt the uncomfortable sensation of being completely, utterly lost. He left without finishing his overpriced wine. 3 months crawled by like wounded animals. Soo-jin threw himself into work the way drowning men grab at driftwood, desperately and without much thought about where it would take him. His father's company kept him busy with meetings that felt increasingly meaningless, deals that helped rich people get richer while everyone else stayed exactly where they were. He tried dating again. Twice. Both times ended with polite excuses and the growing suspicion that maybe Zara hadn't been wrong. Maybe he really didn't know how to see people. Maybe he'd spent so long learning to perform success that he'd forgotten how to actually be present. The realization hit hardest one random Tuesday afternoon when his father called him into the executive office. Han Jae-sung sat behind a desk that probably cost more than a car, reviewing quarterly reports with all the emotional investment of someone reading a grocery list. "The Community Outreach Initiative," Jae-sung said without looking up. "We're cutting it." Soo-jin felt something twist in his chest. "Father, that's the youth center funding. We committed to 3 years. We've committed to many things. Markets change. Priorities shift." His father signed something with a flourish. "Redirect those funds to the Gangnam Development Project. We need leverage with the city council." "But those kids." "Those kids," Jae-sung interrupted, finally looking up with eyes that held no warmth whatsoever, "need parents who make better life choices. We're not a charity, Soo-jin. Stop being so sentimental. It's a liability in business." The words echoed in Soo-jin's head as he rode the elevator down to street level. "Stop being so sentimental. It's a liability." Zara's voice whispered alongside it, "You don't actually see me." Both dismissals. Both people telling him that caring, or not caring, made him fundamentally deficient somehow. Instead of taking his car, Soo-jin walked. Seoul at night was beautiful in ways he usually ignored, too busy moving between expensive interiors to notice the actual city. His feet carried him without conscious direction until he found himself standing outside the youth center, a modest brick building in a neighborhood his father called transitional, which meant not profitable yet. Through the front window, Soo-jin could see kids hunched over battered tables doing homework. A tired-looking volunteer was helping a young boy sound out words, patient and kind in a way that cost nothing but somehow felt priceless. It was simple, honest, real. Everything his life wasn't. He thought about Zara's face when she'd left that restaurant. That careful disappointment that somehow hurt worse than anger ever could. And for the first time, a genuinely uncomfortable question formed in his mind. What if she was right? What if I've been wrong about everything? The next morning, Soo-jin walked into the youth center and did something he'd never done before. He asked how he could help without any cameras present to document his generosity. Miss Park, the center director, looked at him with undisguised suspicion. She was a woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too many rich people making promises they wouldn't keep. "You're Han Jae-sung's son," she said flatly. "Unfortunately," Soo-jin replied before he could stop himself. Something flickered in her expression. Not trust, but maybe the possibility of it. "We need homework tutors. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 to 7. "I'm terrible at math," Soo-jin admitted. "Then you'll fit right in. Most of these kids are too." That's how Soo-jin found himself sitting across from a 12-year-old named Min-jun who looked at him like he was some exotic species of disappointing adult. "You don't know how to do fractions," Min-jun said accusingly, pointing at Soo-jin's very wrong answer on the practice sheet. "I really don't," Soo-jin admitted, feeling his expensive education evaporate under this child's judgment. "But I have a phone with internet, so let's figure it out together?" Min-jun squinted at him suspiciously. "Why are you even here? Rich people don't volunteer at places like this unless they're taking pictures for social media." The observation was so accurate it hurt. "Maybe I'm trying to be less terrible." "Are you terrible?" Soo-jin considered this seriously. "Yeah, I think I might be." Min-jun seemed to respect this honesty. "Okay, but if you're gonna help me with homework, you actually have to learn the stuff first. I'm not teaching you fractions." "Deal." Something unexpected happened over the following weeks. Soo-jin started actually looking forward to Tuesdays and Thursdays. The kids didn't care about his last name or his father's company. They cared whether he showed up on time, whether he actually listened when they talked, whether he kept promises. It was simultaneously the most humbling and liberating experience of his life. Min-jun slowly warmed up to him, though the kids' walls were built high and reinforced with disappointment. "My dad left when I was 6, Min-jun said one evening while they were struggling through a geometry problem. The confession came out casual, like he was commenting on the weather. "Said he'd come back for my birthday. That was 6 years ago." Soo-jin felt something crack open in his chest. "I'm sorry." "It's fine. I'm used to it." Min-jun erased something aggressively. "Adults make promises they don't keep. It's just what they do." "Not all adults," Soo-jin said quietly. "And I promise I'll be here every Tuesday and Thursday." Min-jun looked up, eyes hard with protective skepticism. "Until you get bored. Until the center kicks me out." The boy studied him for a long moment, then returned to his homework. But Soo-jin noticed Min-jun sat a little closer after that. "Small trust," carefully offered. 2 months into volunteering, Soo-jin started noticing things that made his stomach turn. The heating barely worked. The after-school program ran on expired snacks donated from grocery stores. Ms. Park juggled 3 jobs just to keep the doors open because promised funding kept getting mysteriously delayed. Soo-jin knew corporate accounting. He'd been reviewing his father's books since he was 20. So one night, unable to sleep, he logged into the company system and searched for the youth center funding allocation. The money wasn't delayed. It had been quietly rerouted to a shell company 6 months ago. A shell company his father controlled. Money meant for kids' meals and heating was instead sitting in an offshore account, earning interest while children did homework in coats because the building was so cold. Soo-jin sat in his apartment, staring at the screen, understanding with crystalline clarity that exposing this would destroy his relationship with his father, possibly his entire future. The smart move was to close the laptop, forget what he'd seen, and let someone else deal with it. He thought about Min-jun's face when he'd finally solved that impossible geometry problem. Pure pride. He thought about Zara walking away because he hadn't been worth staying for. He made copies of everything. Confronting Han Jae-sung was somehow easier than Soo-jin expected, probably because he'd already accepted that this conversation would end badly. "You went through my private files," his father said, voice calm in that particular way that meant he was furious but controlled. They stood in the private study, just the two of them, no witnesses. "I found what you did with the youth center money," Soo-jin replied, surprised his voice didn't shake. "That was theft. From children. That was business." Jae-sung poured whiskey with steady hands. The center will close eventually anyway. This way the capital serves a productive purpose. How do you live with that? His father actually looked surprised by the question. By understanding that sentiment is expensive. People like us can't afford it. Then maybe I don't want to be people like us. The words hung in the air between them. Jae-sung's expression shifted through several emotions. Surprise, disappointment, something that might have been grief, before settling on cold resolution. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. Probably, Soo-jin agreed, turning toward the door. But it'll be my mistake, not yours. The anonymous tip to the financial crimes unit was detailed, documented, and devastating. Soo-jin didn't expect his father to immediately know it came from him, but he should have anticipated that Han Jae-sung didn't survive decades in cutthroat business by being slow to connect dots. The midnight call from Ms. Park came 3 days later. They came for the records, she said, voice shaking so hard Soo-jin could barely understand her. Men in expensive suits. They took everything. Computers, files, donation records. They're saying we violated building codes, fire regulations, things we've never had problems with before. Soo-jin, they're shutting us down. His blood went cold. What? The investigation was supposed to? What investigation? Nobody's investigating anything except us apparently. We have 30 days to vacate. Jae-sung had moved faster and more ruthlessly than Soo-jin had planned for. I'm coming, he said, already grabbing his keys. The youth center looked violated when he arrived. Boxes everywhere. Files scattered like someone had ransacked the place looking for something to use as leverage. Miss Park sat at her desk, head in her hands, crying quietly. The kids who'd been there for evening activities had been sent home early, confused and scared. Minjun sat on the front steps outside, small duffel bag beside him, eyes red but tearless. He'd learned early that crying didn't help. Soo-jin sat down beside him, not sure what to say. Foster system again, Minjun said flatly. It's fine. I'm used to it. It's not fine. You tried. The boy shrugged, 12 years old and already carrying the weight of adult disappointment. Rich people always win. That's just how it works. Soo-jin felt something crystallize inside him. Anger, clarity, determination. Not this time. What are you gonna do? Minjun asked, not believing but wanting to. Something stupid probably. Soo-jin stood. But I'm done letting him win. Breaking into his father's private office felt surreal. Soo-jin had a key, the security codes, legitimate access. But what he was looking for would obliterate any pretense of reconciliation. The evidence was there, hidden in encrypted folders that weren't as secure as his father thought. Not just the youth center. Years of deals, shortcuts, regulations bent until they broke, people crushed for profit margins. All meticulously documented because Han Jae-sung never imagined his son would actually look. Soo-jin downloaded everything onto 2 drives. One for the prosecutor. One for insurance. He was uploading the files when footsteps echoed in the hallway. Soo-jin's heart slammed against his ribs, but he didn't stop. The files were almost transferred. Almost. I knew you'd come here eventually. Jae-sung stood in the doorway, not surprised, not even particularly angry. Just disappointed in that bone-deep way that somehow hurt more than rage. You could have been great, his father said quietly. You had everything. The name, the training, the connections. And you're throwing it away for what? A building full of children who'll never amount to anything? They'll amount to more than us, Soo-jin replied, ejecting the drive and pocketing it. Because they're learning that people can choose to do the right thing. Even when it costs them. The right thing. Jae-sung laughed without humor. You sound like a child. Better than sounding like you. Security appeared in the doorway. Soo-jin expected violence, expected to be dragged out, but his father simply raised a hand. Let him go, Jae-sung said. He'll learn soon enough what righteousness costs. Soo-jin walked out, drive burning like hot coal in his pocket, knowing he'd just crossed a bridge and set it on fire behind him. The prosecutor took the case. The media explosion was immediate and ugly. Han Jae-sung's carefully cultivated reputation crumbled under documented evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and systematic exploitation of community programs meant to help vulnerable children. The youth center got emergency funding while the courts sorted through the mess. Minjun's foster placement was temporarily secured. And Soo-jin became persona non grata in every circle he'd ever belonged to. Which is why, 3 weeks after his father's arrest, he found himself standing outside a modest coffee shop in a neighborhood he'd never visited, gathering courage to walk inside. Zara sat by the window reading something on her tablet. She looked exactly as beautiful as he remembered and somehow more real than any memory could capture. When he approached, she looked up with surprise that quickly shifted to something more guarded. "Hi," Soo-jin said, feeling 17 and stupid. "Hi," she replied carefully. Can I sit? Just for a minute?" She gestured to the empty chair. Soo-jin sat, acutely aware that he looked nothing like the polished man who'd taken her to that expensive restaurant. His suit was off the rack, his watch was basic, and he probably had permanent bags under his eyes from stress sleeping. "I saw the news," Zara said. "About your father." "Yeah." Soo-jin wrapped his hands around a coffee cup he hadn't ordered yet. "That was me. I gave them the evidence." Her eyes widened slightly. "You turned in your own father? He was stealing from kids." "I couldn't," he trailed off, then started again. "I don't want anything from you. I'm not here to ask for another chance or to prove I've changed or anything like that. I just wanted you to know you were right." "About what?" "Everything." He finally met her eyes. "That night at the restaurant, you asked what I saw when I looked at you. Honestly, I saw someone who made me look good. Not someone I actually saw as a whole person. I've spent the last few months trying to understand the difference." Zara was quiet for a long moment. "Why?" "Because losing you showed me I'd lost myself first. Or maybe I never had a self to begin with. I was just my father's shadow, performing the role of successful son without ever questioning what that meant." He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo of Minjun grinning while holding up a perfect geometry test. "This kid taught me more about being human than 28 years of privilege ever did." "You're volunteering," she said, something softening in her voice. "I was. The center's closed pending investigation, but they're talking about reopening. Miss Park asked if I'd come back when they do." He put his phone away. "I said yes. Assuming I'm not in jail." "Will you be?" "Probably not. My lawyer thinks I'll skate on immunity for cooperating." He smiled without humor. "I lost my inheritance though. My father made sure of that. And my trust funds frozen pending about 17 different legal proceedings." "How are you living?" "2 jobs. Junior analyst at a firm that doesn't care about my connections, and weekend shifts at a bookstore." He saw her surprise. "Turns out when you strip away everything else, I'm not qualified for much. But I'm learning." Zara studied him for so long Soo-jin started to sweat. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. Not politely. Really smiled. "You know what's funny?" she said. "What?" "You're more attractive like this. Broke and honest." Soo-jin felt heat flood his face. "I'm definitely broke. And honest? Getting there. It's harder than it looks." She laughed, and the sound made something tight in his chest finally loosen. "The youth center. When it reopens. They need art therapy programs, don't they?" "Desperately. Ms. Park mentioned it about 40 times." "I teach art therapy," Zara said casually. "Maybe I'll stop by. See what they need." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a relationship. It was something smaller and somehow more significant. A door cracked open, letting light through. "I'd like that," Soo-jin said quietly. "Don't get excited. I'm only coming for the kids." "Understood. And maybe to make sure you're actually doing the work and not just performing growth." "Fair. And maybe," she hesitated, then reached across the table to tap his hand once, briefly. "Maybe because I'm curious who you're becoming." Soo-jin looked at where her finger had touched his skin, feeling that small contact like electricity. "Can I buy you coffee? Like actual coffee? Since we're here?" "You can buy me cheap coffee," she corrected. "Since you're broke now." "The cheapest," he agreed solemnly. She grinned. "Then yes." 6 months dissolved like sugar in water. The youth center reopened with new management, transparent accounting, and a volunteer roster that included both Soo-jin and Zara. Minjun's art started appearing on the walls, bold colors, honest emotions, pieces titled things like "Still Here" and "Becoming." Soo-jin and Zara circled each other carefully, building something neither of them had names for yet. She challenged him constantly, called out his bullshit with surgical precision, and made him laugh more than anyone ever had. "You're doing the thing again," she said one evening while they were cleaning up after an art class. "What thing?" "The thing where you try to organize everything perfectly because you're uncomfortable with chaos." She gestured at the meticulously arranged supply closet. "It's paint supplies, not corporate files. They don't need to be alphabetized." "But what if someone needs burnt sienna quickly in an emergency?" he protested. "A burnt sienna emergency?" She was trying not to laugh. "It could happen." "You're ridiculous." "I'm thorough." "You're ridiculous and thorough." She hip-checked him away from the closet. Go help Minjun frame his new piece. I'll handle the paint chaos. It's not chaos if there's a system. Go. He went, smiling stupidly because casual touches and comfortable bickering felt more intimate than anything he'd experienced before. Minjun looked up from his painting, then at Soo-jin, then back at his painting. You like her. Is it that obvious? You look at her the way I look at pizza. Like she's the best thing ever and you can't believe she exists. Soo-jin laughed. That's actually accurate. Are you gonna ask her out? Like officially? I don't know. We're taking it slow. You're taking it so slow you're basically going backward, Minjun said with the brutal honesty only 12-year-olds possessed. Just ask her. What's the worst that happens? She says no. So, at least then you know. The kid returned to his painting. Adults make everything so complicated. That night, walking Zara to her car because the neighborhood wasn't great after dark, Soo-jin gathered every ounce of courage he possessed. Can I take you to dinner? He blurted out. Like an actual date. Not volunteering that happens to involve food. A real date. Zara stopped walking and turned to face him, street lights casting her face in warm amber. Are you asking because you think you should or because you want to? Because I want to, he said immediately. Because spending time with you is the best part of my week. Because you make me want to be better and you also make me feel like maybe I'm already enough. Because... She kissed him. Quick and soft and tasting like the cheap coffee they'd shared earlier. When she pulled back she was smiling. Yes. Yes. To dinner. To a real date. To seeing where this goes. She touched his cheek gently. You did the work, Soo-jin. Not for me, I see that. You did it for you. That's the difference. I'm still pretty broke, he warned. Good thing I like cheap restaurants. I'll alphabetize the menu when we get there. I know you will. It's weirdly charming now instead of annoying. They stood there on a quiet Seoul street, not far from where his old life had shattered and something truer had emerged from the rubble. Behind them, the youth center glowed with warm light. Inside, kids were learning that adults could actually keep promises. That change was possible. That starting over wasn't failure, it was courage. Minjun appeared at the center window, saw them standing close, and gave an exaggerated thumbs up before Ms. Park pulled him away from the glass. Soo-jin laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. Maybe lighter than he'd ever been. So, Zara said, threading her fingers through his. This dinner date. When? How about this weekend? There's this place that serves incredible bibimbap for like 5,000 won. Fancy. The fanciest cheap food you've ever had. Perfect. She squeezed his hand. Pick me up at 7. And Soo-jin? Yeah. Thank you for becoming someone I'd actually want to see. He didn't have words for what that meant, so he just held her hand tighter and let the moment speak for itself. If you're still watching this, it means you believe in second chances too. In people who do the hard work of changing. In love that isn't built on perfection but on genuine growth. This story proves that transformation isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up, day after day, and choosing to be better. If this moved you, hit that like button, drop a comment telling us about a time someone's growth inspired you, and subscribe to Addicted to Stories for more tales that'll make you believe in the power of change. Because sometimes the best love stories aren't about finding the right person. They're about becoming someone worth finding. The date that weekend was perfect in all the ways that actually mattered. The restaurant was tiny, crowded, and the bibimbap was exactly as good as Soo-jin promised. They talked for 3 hours, laughed until other diners stared, and walked home the long way because neither wanted the night to end. Soo-jin walked Zara to her door, nervous in a way he hadn't been since he was 16. I had a really good time, he said. Me too. She leaned against her doorframe, smiling in a way that made his heart do complicated things. Want to know something funny? Always. That first date at the expensive restaurant? I knew within 10 minutes I'd be leaving. But tonight? I didn't want it to end. What's the difference? You, she said simply. The real you. Not the performance. He stepped closer, giving her time to move away if she wanted. She didn't. Can I kiss you goodnight? He asked. You better. This kiss was different from the one outside the youth center. Slower. Deeper. Full of promise and patience and the understanding that they had time to figure this out. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Zara touched her forehead to his. See you Tuesday, she whispered. Wouldn't miss it. She slipped inside and Soo-jin walked home feeling like maybe finally he understood what it meant to be seen. To see someone else. To build something real instead of impressive. His apartment was small and the furniture was secondhand, But when he lay down that night, he slept better than he had in his father's mansion. Because the weight of lies and performance was gone. And what remained, though smaller and humbler, was finally completely his. Sometimes we think change means losing everything. Soo-jin lost his inheritance, his family name, the future his father designed for him. But he gained something far more valuable, the ability to look at himself in the mirror and recognize the person staring back. He learned that real love doesn't come from being impressive. It comes from being honest. That transformation isn't a grand moment where everything shifts overnight. It's 1,000 small choices to show up, to listen, to care when no one's watching. That being wealthy in relationships matters more than being wealthy in accounts. That children like Minjun can teach us more about courage than any business degree ever could. And most importantly, that sometimes the people who walk away from us aren't giving up on us, they're giving us the gift of seeing who we actually are, and the chance to become someone better. The weight of change is heavy. But it's nothing compared to the weight of living a lie. If this story touched your heart, if you believe people can genuinely transform, if you've ever walked away from something comfortable to find something real, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment and tell us about a time when losing something led you to find yourself, or share this with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to change. And don't forget to subscribe to Addicted to Stories, because we're here to remind you that the most powerful stories aren't just entertainment, they're mirrors showing us who we can become. New stories every week that'll make you laugh, cry, and believe in the beautiful mess of being human. Because you didn't just watch a story. You witnessed a transformation. And maybe, just maybe, you're ready for your own.